Well, we're on another Friday morning. Fine Friday morning it is too. Pat, how are the meteorological situation shaping up about Donegal?
Jude, it's a wet morning, but Jude, it's not
Wet
that
is
particularly
it?
cold
Wet?
here.
Oh, is it wet? It's
Uh,
dry here. Ah, that's desperate. That means
but I should,
about a half an hour's time we'll be getting a torrent of rain then. Keep your bloody rain,
yeah.
Pat. Keep it there.
Jude, I keep telling you, see if there's a weather warming anywhere on the weather warning, I should say, on the island of Ireland. Donegal is if there's 10 weather warnings, Donegal's certain to get nine of them, no matter what it is.
Do you
Yeah.
ever get fed up with that, Pat? There is a
Uh,
truth to that. In fact, down the whole western seaboard, Mayo and
exactly.
Galway and
I
Kerry.
think it seems to come down by the northwest,
Uh,
and goes down the country at first.
does it never
No,
choose?
Jude, I don't believe that.
It doesn't bother you.
No, not Maurice. And Jude, the sort of the price you pay, and I'm saying this as a proud Donegal man, it's a beautiful place, and it's a
Yeah.
very peaceful place, and and you pay a price. Like I can look out, there's a forest behind me, there's a river over or a lake over there,
Mm.
and there's mountains over there. Like Jude, pay a price for that, and I like for the good days. I'm quite willing to put up with the bad days.
Do you find yourself consciously glad that you're alive and appreciative of what's around you? Because it's very easy to.
Absolutely. Well, the way I look at it, every day above ground's a bonus. Jude, put it this, I have a whole lot of interest in a whole lot of things. Like this sounds like a self-help book now, but I try and enjoy
My
myself.
name is
When,
Pat.
when, when you get up in the morning, like Jude, I do believe if you have a choice, if you want to sort of be down and sort of in the dumps and Jude, I'm alive today. I'll worry about tomorrow.
Aye. I remember we talked about that. We talked, I don't know if it was on air or not, but the idea of deciding to be happy as distinct from deciding to
Uh,
be grumpy. And there are people who give into, there's amazing number of people who give into it. They say, oh, I'm quite
uh,
old now and
uh,
my best days
Dude,
are past.
look at yourself. Hey, you're still going walking, going jogging. You're doing
I mean,
podcasts.
you should
Dude,
hear the
people,
neighbors laughing now. You should hear the neighbors laughing.
but I think the point is, dude, you know this, and I'm deadly serious about this. I know people who have given up, who should really have never. No, their health was good, they
Yeah.
were physically okay, but mentally they're saying, "Ah, my life's over." No, there's
Aye.
some people when they retired, they thought their life, geez, dude, find something to do.
Aye, exactly. Couldn't agree more. Okay, we've got something to do. In fact, we've got more than enough to do here. So let's get cracking on it. The first one I have on the list here now, it may not be the most important story, but it is the story of the return of Bertie Ahern, of course,
Very,
to the fold of Fianna Fáil. Now, two questions. How did you think he was looking as you watched him on the TV? And secondly, why do you
he's
think he's come back now?
Well, I think there's a sort of calculated risk here. Isn't it? The 25th anniversary of the Good Friday Agreement's coming up.
But
Bertie was,
start with tell me how you thought he looked.
he's got old looking, and the years have worried him, But
He
and
looks like a man who might enjoy a drink or two.
like he looks like a man who might enjoy another pint of Bass. Yeah,
Ah,
remember that was his favourite tipple.
ah,
He's probably had a good life since he left. But the thing about Bertie, I'd say at this stage, Fianna Fáil, they're trying to hang probably the crowning glory of any politician in this last century, Jude, was getting the Good Friday Agreement over the line and
yeah,
brought an end to the troubles. It was an international agreement. American presidents were involved, British prime ministers were involved, the EU was involved, and our Taoiseach, Bertie Ahern at the time, was front and centre, and his role during the time won universal no, praise and was plaudits and whatever.
yeah. It was even
And that
emotional.
was
You remember his mother died halfway through the negotiation.
and apparently he was very, very close to his mother. So the fact that he kept going in the midst of all that, and I think that there was genuine sympathy for him and understanding and compassion for him. Now, that was considered at that time, Fianna Fáil's crowning glory. The subsequent Mahan Tribunal and findings of, digouts and money under the bed, and Atisha, our former finance minister, who said he didn't have a bank account, and so on, so on.
Yeah,
So that sort of tarnished the reputation. But right, here's the thing. You asked the question. The 25th anniversary of the Good Friday isn't it this year, right?
yep, yep.
Uh, so Bernie comes back in. Fianna Fáil probably say, right, hey, look, this is Bertie's, if we take Bertie, we can sort of rejig that and sort of take the credit for it and so on. And I presume there's a calculation that the upside of all this will be greater than the downside in regard to man. But the other thing as well, Jude, I noticed this, and there's sort of been a wee bit of rehabilitation in recent years. I noticed there quite recently he's becoming more and more frequent broadcaster on RTE. For years he disappeared, but he's now, when there's anything going on in the north, or even in regard to Brexit, I heard Claire Byrne had him on a couple of times, and I heard him on with Miriam O'Callaghan. Now, so I presume there's a sort of easing him back in.
Oh yeah, well that has been going on for quite a while.
Yeah,
I'm near pretty sure it was a Martin McGuinness book. Now I can't remember how long ago that was. When did Martin McGuinness die? What year?
About 5-6 years ago. No, I can never remember years.
5 or 6 years ago. Well, at least 4 years ago, Bertie was the guest of honour at the launch of that Martin McGuinness book in Dublin. And mind you, it was very typical of the way things are with Bertie. Some of the people were delighted and were loving getting their photograph taken with him and everything. There were other people, when they heard it was a guest of honour, they were going to come, and they wrote to me and they says, "That was no way will I go near where that scoundrel is." So he was a sort of Marmite man. You either loved him or you detested him.
Yeah.
But he certainly has been rehabilitating himself by degrees. And if you look at his CV, he's a member of a whole lot of, different foundations and movements for peace and a whole lot of stuff. He's not sitting at home twiddling his thumbs. He's been working on it. I think myself, here's my take on it, Pat. I think, number one, like anybody who's achieved something, as you say, pretty monumental, or was part of achieving something pretty monumental, he would like to have his victory lap.
Yeah, of course you would.
Just Paisley like to have his victory lap. So there's always the element of human vanity, I suppose. Second thing is, it's obvious to me, I mean, this wouldn't have happened without consultation with Fianna Fáil and Micheál Martin. And they weighed things up, and they hoped that the scoundrel memories of Bertie will be balanced out, and more than balanced out, by the great work he did on the Good Friday Agreement, which will be very much in the headlines now. So I think Micheál is figuring that this won't do the Fianna Fáil party any harm anyway. It'll probably do it some good. And he's playing it, Micheál's playing it cool, and not saying too much. And Bertie's is not saying what I'm sure is on his mind. I haven't thought as far as the presidency and so on. Although I see in any report about him that coming back, that's always mentioned. Now, some say he won't be able to do it, or some say he won't want to do it, and he leaves it vague, but it does come up. I think it's a distinct possibility.
Jude, it's the presidency. I think it's coming up as a 225. I think
that's right, 25. Yeah,
2 years time. If he's rehabilitated now, if he's centre stage in the celebrations of the Good Friday Agreement, see in 2 years time, a lot of people who will be voting now will have forgotten about whatever, the scandals and so on. And Bertie, by the way, it's just worth putting on record, Bertie has said he has never ever taken a corrupt payment, and he's never taken a bribe. And whether we disagree with him, there's one thing you have to see: he has never ever, as far as I can see, lived a big lifestyle, a la Charlie Dahi. And either he's very, very clever, or whatever. So, but let's give him the credit, or the sort of balance that he says he has never taken one. Now,
he has that's a persuasive argument, Pat. Agree with you. I agree with you.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
So no, but Judy, the thing about all this is, I presume he's coming back in. Fianna Fáil see it as a plus, and Bertie, without question, I don't think there's one rule left for him, and to use your term, he would like a lap of honour. So running for the presidency, and of course, Jude, if Donald Trump and people like that can get elected with their baggage, what's to stop Bertie Ahern?
Yes, indeed. And I just finally say this: it's very easy to sort of pigeonhole people and say, look, he claimed he hadn't got a bank account. But if you set that aside and you meet the guy, I find him, I just warm to him. I want him. I knew all that stuff,
I
but I
met him a
still
couple of
weren't him
times.
as a human being.
I met him a couple of times. I found him a very warm human being. In fact, I met him one time in Dublin for something or other. And I remember sitting, he had just missed out on Tisha or getting. He's, his language was down to earth. I effed up there and so on and so on. And he hardly knew me, but he was chatting to me as if I was a friend.
Aye, that's right.
And he was
That's right.
and he was good crack, and he was self-deprecating. He wasn't in the least bit arrogant. He said, in other words, he says it was my fault. I effed up there. He sort of, I like people like that, and
Aye,
like
that's true.
yeah.
That absence of arrogance is very notable.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't see you you can't see Jeffrey Donaldson talking that way. Anyway, let's move on then to the.
A quick question for you. Do you think he will run for the presidency in 2025?
That'll depend on circumstances. I think it'll depend on the. I think if he runs, he'll have to run as a Fianna Fáil candidate.
Yeah.
So he'll have to get the approval of the Fianna Fáil party. That will depend, I think, to some extent, on how they do in the next election, because that'll be well over in 2024. I think if the Fianna Fáil party does better than they expected, that would increase the chances of Bertie running. I think if the Fianna Fáil party goes down more, or sort of is decimated, as they say, I would see that as making it a bit more unlikely. Could be wrong. I mean, there have been worse people than him in the Arsenal.
Yeah, I had a laugh. Somebody asked Bertie the other day about running for the president. He says, "Jesus," he says, "that's a long time away." He says, "If I'm still alive in 2025, come back and ask me."
That's right. Yeah, and at least he won't be quoting poetry.
Yeah,
Can be fairly sure of that. Okay, let's move to the present and what's going on at Stormont or not going on at Stormont. There's been a lot of pretty frantic activity over the last couple of days. Maybe you could clarify for me on our viewer what the situation is exactly with regard to Dahi's law and going back and not going back. And so on.
Well, apparently there was a piece of what they call secondary legislation needed for that. Dahi's law was basically nearly done and dusted, but it needs a secondary legislation.
Because we should probably say what Dahi's law is, Pat, maybe.
This organ transplant thing and all the rest. Jude, by the way, last night I was just to fill you in a bit of background. I was watching last night The View, and what do you call him? Paul Given of the DUP was on, and Paul Given was under serious pressure last night. The first time I've seen the DUP. All the other people in the studio, I think all five parties were as one and saying the DUP. Apparently there's something like 100 people. This is real life and death for them. Transplants, and Dahi's law would allow transplants to take place right away, and apparently they can't. Now Dahi has apparently to go over to England now, and so on. So there's all sorts of complications. It's kicking it down the road, and this is urgent for a lot of people. Now the DUP saying if Westminster can bring in things in regard to abortion and override the Stormont, they can do the same for the Dahi's law. But Heaton Harris is suggesting no, they can't, and various other people are saying no, they can't. So, Jude, I am not 100% certain in regard to the technicalities. But Heaton Harris yesterday announced that he put elections on the long finger. So I presume that's given the DUP more time, more wriggle room to sit out. But hey, Jude, they are starting to get. Last night, Paul Given looked extremely uncomfortable. Extremely uncomfortable.
Well, we've recorded that, so I'll make a point of having a look at that. As I understand it, I could have got this wrong, but as I understand it, the Assembly could come together on Tuesday. Appoint a speaker, and then, as it were, pass Dahi's law. And then they could, clear off again. If that's the case, then it is true. The DUP are under real pressure with a ticking clock. And of course, this is a sort of heartbreaking thing. It's not just to say we want to have, consent, except people say they don't want their organs to be used. It's young Dahi. There he is, 6 years old. There he is up at Stormont. There he is with his parents.
And like a wee 6-year-old, like a normal, raise hands up in the air and full of life.
Very, very, very moving.
And I don't mean that's the way it sounds, But if I picked it up last night, now I could, by the sound of it, there's up to about 100 people. This is a matter of life and death. And should say one of those people dies, I would, if I was a politician, I would hate to have that on my conscience. That would be, Jude, what's more important? Is the protocol more important than someone's life? And by the way, yesterday, Jude, just to digress again, the court ruling earlier this week, me and you have raised this problem a couple of times. The judges said it does not change one iota the constitutional position of Northern Ireland. So, so let's work that one out. The constitutional position remains the same. So the protocol, it's about goods and trade and all that. Jude, I've mentioned this before. I have seen numerous ads for insurance companies and pension plans, and it's not applicable in Northern Ireland. Mm-hmm. During the foot and mouth, the island of Ireland was treated differently than to Britain, and so on. So there have been differences in the past. So the protocol is where the EU and the UK meet, and it's on the island of Ireland. So it needs something different. We can all live with the protocol, instead of this big constitutional issue that the DUP seems to want to make it out. Yeah. No, there is wriggle room for them if they really wanted to make it work.
Well, it's not even wriggle; they could just do it. There are accusations that Dahi is being weaponized and being used.
That's weaponizing.
I find that well, it's more than offensive, actually. By saying that you think a youngster should have a chance of life, you're then weaponizing it. Well, you're not actually, but it is going to be damaging for the DUP if you don't get in there and allow that child at least a fighting chance, and hundreds of others as well.
Yeah,
I mean, there's any number of people that, if you could have this consent assumed, there's any number of people who would then have availability of transplant organs.
And just let's get that. There was a throwaway line. Well, I think it was Professor Dahi or somebody said it. I'm not 100% certain. There are now people being given 11-year waiting lists for hip replacements. 11 years, Jude. Oh. Jesus Christ, Jude, that is an indicator that the health service is now broken completely, utterly, totally.
Yeah. Just one thing I'll finish with, and that is, I heard, or somebody said, it was a reporter, I'm not sure who it was, that said that both Given and Jeffrey Donaldson have met with Dahi and his family, and that they were in good terms with them.
Given apparently is in very, very good terms with and is very much involved, and fairness to him, apparently was very, very good. Really wanted to do this, and last night you could see he wants to do something.
Did he say that he wanted to do this?
He said that he knew the family, that he had been in contact with them and all that, and you could see that. Now I think he's possibly Jude. He refused to say they wouldn't meet on Tuesdays, which was a bit different, and he says the party will meet on Monday morning. Now I have to give Mark Carruthers really kudos. Mark Carruthers, I presume, I'm not about to presume, he's from the unionist background and etc. But last night, Mark Carruthers has interrogation of the DUP. You would have sworn he was from a Republican background. He'd give him I think that's a sign of a really good interviewer. That when there's certain others, Jude, put it like this, have let people off the hook.
Mm-hmm. How anybody could have done anything but put Paul Given under the gun, so to speak, in this situation. You see, your point is probably true, that he gets along very well with the family and he's good intentions. But I tend to judge people by their words, not just their words certainly, but what do they do? So it'd be like me telling somebody that I love them, and then I go out and beat the crap out of their child. You've got to follow up the words with actions. There's got to be a uniformity. There's got to be a sort of a symmetry in your life, if that's what it's going to be. Otherwise, they're just empty, and in fact, it's almost despicable if your words are fine, but your actual delivery is nothing.
Yeah, well, Jude, apparently the DUP are having a meeting on, I think it's Given said it is on Monday morning, and there is. I didn't rule out the possibility. No, he didn't say it was going to happen either, so there's no point in putting words into his mouth. But they could meet up for an hour or something to pass this law. It hasn't been ruled out yet. but I think it's highly unlikely. But Jude, when you start thinking about it, the protocol, they've made such. Jude, apparently we mentioned this on Monday. The protocol, and I've read a wee bit in recent days, and I've heard Tony Connolly on. Apparently, they are close to an agreement.
Yeah.
You tell me if the British government and the EU reach an agreement on the protocol and they go ahead with it, and the DUP turns it down, what happens then?
Well, I don't know what without contradicting themselves, it's very hard to see how the DUP can do anything but say they were betrayed. And then maybe they'll say that we're being betrayed, but we'll sort of soldier on. It's not the first time they have betrayed us, but that will mean going back into the executive. And I'm sorry to be a cynic, but I think at the back of all of this, at least one element is this notion of finally serving as deputy first minister under a Sinn Féin first minister. Do you think is that?
I have always held the view that no matter what they say publicly, and no matter what, somewhere deep in the psyche of unionism, the whole raison d'etre, to use that term, of the northern state was based on supremacy, based on the hegemonic rule of the unionists. They thought when this place was set up, what was it, 66 or 70% was unionist, 32, 33% Catholic, and they thought, or whatever it was, they thought they would ever more a man, the Third Reich, 1,000 years. Instead of that, unless in 100, well, about 100 years, now it's all changed. And when you think about it, they're scared of the rise of Sinn Féin. They feel that the British government don't trust them. They see America and the EU as being anti them. There's almost a political sort of paranoia everywhere.
Yeah,
and you sort of go,
yeah.
I don't know. No, when you put it all together, you go, geez, I would hate to be a unionist.
Well, maybe it's time to, win friends and influence people. It's so obvious. We've talked about this before too. There's no way, in my opinion, there's no way in the long run, maybe the short term even, that the North will continue to exist if it doesn't change radically in terms of how it, just the degree to which nationalists are welcomed as well as being entitled to, key positions in the state. Anyway, I think this talk about weaponizing Dahi is rubbish, and you'd have to have a heart of stone. You really would have to have a heart of stone by saying, I'm not going back in because I might look bad. Okay, so this kid dies.
Those who are suggesting, dude, this law was almost passed. That would have had nothing to, nobody was weaponizing it then. The fact that this it now needs secondary legislation to get it passed. And now, Jude, I don't know what the bits that need secondary legislation are, but anyway, but they get it passed, and this is a matter of grave importance for many people. It's got nothing to do with politics.
Well, I think they're saying it has everything to do with politics. They're saying that they're glad that the judgment was given, that this is definitely legal, and now we can concentrate on the politics, which is what it's been always about. Rubbish. Anyway, let's move on.
I just go back to you a minute. See, you just raised something there. That judgment earlier this week, which was demolished in its entirety. The one brought by Kate Hoey and Jim Alistair and whoever else.
Supreme Court.
They tried to turn that around as a victory. They were bigging up.
That's what I'm saying. They were saying, "Oh, this is great. This was a good judgment." Because it takes it out of legal.
The judgment didn't really matter. Right, can I ask you again a question? If it didn't really matter, why did they bring the case to the court in the first place?
I thought whenever they said they were really glad that the judgment had been given, I thought of Animal Farm. I think I had even a blog on it. Remember, four legs good, two legs bad, and then the pigs decide another chant they wanted to teach the sheep: 4 legs good, 2 legs better. So it's a bit like that, we really feel that it'll be very important to test this thing legally, and then the legally goes against you and you say, oh, I'm delighted that happened. Anyway, listen, I ran out of
well.
space last day. They didn't get me saying a graceful farewell. I was cut off in mid-sentence.
Yeah,
So let's bash
that's
on quickly these other remaining things,
right,
okay?
keep going.
Right. Joe Biden.
Yeah.
It sounded as somebody said more like Prime Minister's question time. So it was that bad. It was nearly as bad as the House of Commons whenever he was giving it. Was it his State of the Union address?
Judy, I was watching. Watched it on Sky the other night. At one stage, was this when the president of America gave the State of the Union address? It was listened to with silence and applause and absolute, respect. Last Friday or last Monday night, Joe Biden did give us Marjorie Taylor Greene, who's I can't remember her exactly. As a Georgia, she's a QAnon conspiracy theorist. She's a flirts with white supremacists. She's an absolute Looney Tune.
But she's okay.
But she got her. She arrived in with a sort of a white coat, furry coat made from alpaca fur, and everybody's wondering what's she doing coming undressed like that. And apparently, she was trying to identify with the balloon that was shot down over him, and so on. And halfway through the things, Joe Biden mentioned something about Obamacare and so on, and she shouted up liar and so on. Now, Jude, Kevin McCarthy, who's now the leader of apparently several of the sort of extreme conspiracy theorists, he tried to shush them and tell them to shut up and so on, but they're not paying any attention. Jude, the Republicans were once the party of law and order. They were the Tory party of America. They seem to have been totally infected by Looney Tunes, absolute far right extremists, people who seem to have got elected on some of the most ridiculous things. They're basically nearly now becoming the Flat Earth Society. And it's amazing to see it.
Would you say they're as bad as the Tories?
There
are similarities. There are similarities, I think. Maybe
similarities. These people. I think the decline in mainstream media has allowed the rise of like Donald Trump. Didn't do any mainstream interviews prior to his election. He only went on Fox News. He never did meet the press. He never did anything with ABC or CBN or whatever the hell, the mainstream media. Yeah. He tweeted all the time, and that he worked the whole system because he knew he was so ridiculous that he would be exposed. Boris Johnson, by the way, refused to go on with Andrew Neil because Andrew Neil would expose them.
Destroyed him.
Neil is a master of detail. He's great at going on with these guys where he can bluster and bluff. The days of serious politicians. When you've got clowns, getting elected, you're going to get a circus.
Well, people get the politicians they elect. Okay, I was cut off, as I said, in mid-sentence last day, so I'm determined not to happen. And maybe we'll confine ourselves to one last item because there's something that I've got guilty feelings about, and that's these earthquakes in Turkey and in Syria, and the most appalling bloody shots on TV, homes destroyed, people falling to their knees with weeping. I've got to, and then appeals going out for £10, to support them. Yeah. I tell you the truth, I switch over when it comes on. Now that might be a bad thing to do, but I very quickly, whether it's I'm bored by it or whether it is I'm so appalled by it or whatever it is, that I just can't watch it anymore. The other thing is this, and it's provoked this thought in me. These terrible things, like the Ukraine war, like the Turkey and Syria earthquake, is this not sort of akin to rubbernecking? The way there's a crash and everybody stops the car to have a look and they want to see the person lying on the ground. Is he bleeding? Oh, he's bleeding. Because let's face it, Pat, all the news that we watch, virtually none of it we can influence. Yeah. Virtually none. We've no role to play, really.
Yeah. No, so, I agree with much of what you said. Dude, the figure this morning apparently is above 21,000.
That's right.
Yeah, you're right. And you're sitting watching it, and Jude, it is. I turn it over for the very. Jude, I can't stomach it. I genuinely can't.
Less than a minute, Pat. Less than a minute.
No. They see the tears and Jude, and there's bugger all, and it's you feel impotent. And by the way, it gets to me. It really gets to me.
Should we be watching it? Is the idea of news, yes or no? Should the idea of news good or bad?
Well, you can't ignore it either, Jude.
Okay, I'll take your word for it. Okay, I don't think
Yeah.
it makes a bit of difference. Okay, Pat, thanks very much. On
All
that
the best,
happy
Jude.
note, enjoy your
On that
weekend.
happy note,
Okay.
enjoy your weekend. See you later. Good luck.